For my documentary, I'm going to base it on community radio, and for my case study, I've chosen a local community radio station, Hope FM, and challenged it to see whether it really is life-changing or not. And here with me, I have two people for my focus group.
Why did you specifically choose Hope FM?
Okay, well that actually is an interesting question because personally I have spent time working at Hope FM, so I know how beneficial it has been to my life, and I want to see if my colleagues have different opinions to me. And I feel that Hope FM is a very good judge of community radio station because only 4 of all of the employees get paid. The rest of them are volunteers. So it really is a community radio station, and it really does rely on the community.
How do you follow the codes and conventions of a documentary?
Well, that's an interesting question, actually. My documentary actually does subvert a few conventions. For instance, I've used a narrative device which is not used in many documentaries at all. That was inspired by Spellbound, when you could see each contestant get knocked out. You know, their picture would fade from the image that would come up. But I think the style of editing is typical of a documentary. It kind of cuts back and forth. It doesn't just have one interview and then, you know, another interview. And the cinematography is artistic, and that differs from some documentaries, I find. You know, it has, you know, for the topic, it's very well crafted cinematography, and it's, you know, done in a stylistic approach, which is nice and refreshing. But the codes and conventions that we do follow are the voice of God. We have a voiceover that guides it consistently, and we have legends, and, you know, we have the typical experts, the people who know the industry, and I find that that's how we follow the conventions.
What editing techniques did you use?
For Final Cut, we used quite a lot of transitions initially in the 2 rough versions, but we gradually used less and less as it got towards the final cut, ironically named. The main techniques were just cutting it up and moving it around, really. I guess it was a bit more difficult with sound editing because we had an external sound device, the Tascam IM2, and so we had to sync it up with the video file, which was tricky, and it was the best editing technique that we have. We've done sound bridging, and we've got some good intercuts, but other than that, we've kept it quite simple, which is actually really effective if you think about it.
What experts will you be interviewing?
We'll be interviewing 2 Drive Time presenters, Emma and Ryan. Emma actually also runs a training course, which is interesting, and she talks about that a little bit. And we'll also be interviewing the production manager, Dan Withy, as well as the sales and marketing manager, Sheena Damon. But also we'll be interviewing me, which should be interesting, because I personally have some experience of work experience there, and I thought it would be nice to bring my own opinion forward as maybe a 2-step flow or something like that. I think that this would be effective because it not only affects the way I edit it, but it also affects the way that it's filmed and the way that the audience interpret it. What are they going to think if it's coming from me, the person who crafted part of it? So that should be interesting. In regards to all the others, they have enormous amounts of experience in the industry, especially community radio, and they are definitely the right people to ask because, like I said, they know the industry, they know how they got involved with Hope FM, how Hope FM has changed their lives, essentially, and I think that's, you know, effective.
Will you be comparing the radio station to any commercial radio stations?
Do you want the truthful answer or the lie? No, okay, I'm going to tell you the truth. We are not going to look at any commercial radio stations. I think it would be beneficial if we did, but I think it would also be more difficult to get hold of. I'm gonna tell the truth. I'm not too keen on commercial radio stations, so I figured by focusing more on community that we'd just show the essence of community radio and not drag down commercial radio. There are benefits to having a commercial radio station instead of a community. We do discuss that in some places, but we don't really have a focus on commercial radio because I didn't want to drag it away from the case study of Hope FM.
What are you going to do in the documentary in the forms of microelements?
For the microelements, location is important. Obviously, it's going to be set in actual Hope FM studio, production studio, corridor, all that jazz. Location is important. I tried to branch out a bit more outside of the actual studios because I wanted to focus on Bournemouth, Paul and Christchurch as well, the places where they broadcast. And I felt that the introduction really opens the eyes of, the surrounding area and how genuinely pretty it is, and, the kind of people that would live within that demographic are represented through those shots as well. With mise en scène, there were obviously, in the cinematography, it was cleverly done so that items that would be associated with radio were in the background. Very obvious, I find, that it was about radio and not anything else. I think it was really well done. And things like microphones, faders, screens and monitors, headphones, everything that you'd find in a radio station has been conveniently placed in the background or in the foreground, just generally included. As regards to costume and makeup, there wasn't really, I wanted the interviewees to feel like they could be themselves, so I let them wear their own clothes when interviewing them, and I wore my own clothes. I hope you like my style. Just wear what they usually wear, because that's what I was trying to go for. I was trying to go for a true representation of the presenters and their style. I'm not going to try and make it pretentious at all. With facial expression and body language, I wanted people to try and avoid being closed off, but I didn't want to force them not to, obviously. If they were discussing something that's close and personal to them, they might be showing some closed off body language to, kind of convey how much it means to them. But like me, a few of them had I'm doing it right now actually as I'm talking, quite open body language because they are radio presenters and they're used to talking, lots of talking. Other than that, I can't really think of any micro elements that I haven't covered. Pretty much covered everything. Lighting was a bit tricky because we're inside a studio. It's very artificial lighting, but we try to work around that by aiming the lights on the ceiling towards the subject, therefore maximising the level of lighting so that it didn't look too gloomy, because there has been a tendency to think that about radio stations, they look a bit gloomy, there's only one window, doesn't really open. And we also tried to make that issue a little less obvious with the establishing shots at the beginning. Anyway, from what I gather, that's all the questions that needed to be asked. Thank you very much for doing my focus group with me.
Oh yeah, no problem, that's fine.